everybody? Ty here. Hope everyone is doing well. So, we're pretty far into the holiday season here. We're getting towards the end of the year, and with us being in that time frame now, we have the probably what I'll say is one of the last outlooks that we'll be making for the winter season. Of course, as we know, towards the middle part of March, the spring equinox begins. So, that being said, we'll be getting a look at the rest of winter from this point. This is it, guys. It's pretty crazy how things have how we've pretty much just progressed throughout the year, really, at this point. But keep in mind, of course, as I say in all of these seasonal outlooks, this is looking over a 90-day average where there's a ridiculous amount of room for things to change. So, with that being said, here is our sneak peek at what the next 3 months could look like getting into 2025 right now. Since we're still expected at this point to be in a neutral phase, ENSO, like right on the edge of a weak La Nina here. Technically, we're still in a weak La Nina, but at this point here, I would say that we're like I say, when I say literally, like the range for neutral ENSO is negative zero point 0.5 degrees to positive zero point 0.5 degrees. This purple line is the line that we're looking at in particular here. And what you'll notice is we're right on that line. We're starting to actually push into that neutral ENSO phase as we go through the January, February, March timeframe here, as represented by this acronym. So a lot is prone to change, more so than usual. The weather, as we know, is often prone to changing in general. So these last few months could definitely be a wild card. I'd expect a lot of changes as we get towards the back half of this time frame in particular. And we'll get into the details with that more. But typical of a La Nina look, we have the cooler temperatures out towards the northwestern states and the northern states. Out towards the east, it tends to be a little bit warmer than average. Recent time, even the northeast has been kind of caught up in that. Based off what we're seeing on the outlook, we can anticipate that to continue. Deep south here often tends to be a good bit warmer than average with La Nina looks here. Not really surprised to see this appearing on the screen as well. And then out towards the southwest is a point of interest, but we'll talk about that more probably in the next outlook, and because that has a little bit more to do with severe weather. But seeing those above average temperatures right there does kind of make me raise a brow here, of course. Out towards Alaska right here, and this is always important for the northwest here, seeing those below average temperature signals here definitely increases confidence over towards areas like Washington, Oregon, Montana, and parts of northern Idaho as well. There is an interesting area of above average temperatures expected towards the northern regions of Alaska here as well. So, like I said, I do think a lot of shifting is going to be occurring, especially as we get further into the winter time frame. So, next thing we're going to do, of course, is take a look at the precipitation outlook to go along with it. Very important to discuss that. And one interesting signal that I'm finding with this, and kind of leads me to think that we're going to see a more active storm pattern as we get towards the back half of winter, is this notable precipitation probability over here towards the Ohio Valley and Great Lakes. We're getting into that 50 to 60 percentile range here. So depending on how the storm track behaves and whether we get any ridging out ahead of it, could be potential for severe weather. There also could be lake effect snow added into the mix as well. Don't know it as much in regards to the potential for dynamic storm systems as of right now. I was thinking that this month, honestly, would have been much more active than it was. Mostly it's been lake effect snow, but we haven't seen any nor'easters or anything of the like, which is something to be honestly grateful for, because those can usually be pretty crippling at times, no matter where you are. But in any case, though, it's been quieter than expected, and I'm here for it. I'm sure many of you are. But do need to be keeping an eye on this time frame if you're over here towards the Ohio Valley, especially over towards the Great Lakes. Looks like there could be something cooking here. Of course, like I said before, it's a 90-day average. We're looking over a 90-day average. I don't know for sure if that's going to be anything of major significance as of yet, but this leads me to think that there always is that heightened possibility there. Same can be pretty much set out towards the northwest, but this is where most of the activity has been, and we can anticipate that to continue. This how significant, of course, still kind of hard to tell at this range, but in any case, though, pretty good signal expected over here towards the upper Midwest and upper Northwest in particular. Now, another thing that kind of interests me, of course, and this is also pretty typical for a La Nina look, is to see the deep south with below average precipitation probabilities here. Excuse me. So over here towards Florida is where we have notably below average precip chances here. We're getting into that 50 to 60 percentile range there. Then over towards the desert southwest, it's a pretty similar deal. Not too far out of the ordinary, but that does lead me to be interested in a potential early resurgence, maybe in severe season. If any of you that are more savvy with weather know what the EML is, this look here might interest you in particular. But in any case, though, seeing those above average precipitation looks over towards northern Alaska, but seeing it transition to below average by the time we get towards southern Alaska just kind of piqued my interest as well. I do think that storm track eventually may start to shift further and further to the south. So, like I said, I think that as we get further into the winter and towards the beginning of spring, we're going to start to see much more in the way of moving parts in regards to our weather here. So it's going to be a lot to keep watch of as we go further along into 2025. Now, one thing to make note of here as we look at the oscillations here. Of course, as we know, we're going to be looking at 30-day averages. So this isn't going to be telling the full story. But a couple of things that I've kind of picked up on here. January, we're seeing a negative NAO phase. NAO region is right where we have the cursor over towards Greenland. Whenever you see a negative phase, it's usually a little bit colder out towards the northeast in particular. Sometimes it'll sneak into the deep south depending on the jet stream and other factors. But as far as the Arctic oscillation, we're kind of in a slightly positive phase. Now watch what happens as we go into the following month here. Both of these areas are kind of contrasting against each other ever so slightly. But if you move this in a loop back and forth here, you'll kind of notice a little bit of a circulation of that cold air moving in and then warm air coming in behind it. So like I said, a lot of flip-flopping seems to be possible here. Depending on how this all pans out, like I said, severe weather definitely could be in the equation here. Lake effect snow definitely seems like it's possible, but just how devout and how strong these storm systems may yet become, or potential storm systems may yet become, still kind of hard to tell at this point. So it's going to be interesting to see how things pan out. Make sure you guys, of course, check out the January outlook that we just dropped yesterday. So in any case, though, let's keep this ball rolling here. We're going to go ahead and take a look at the temperature anomaly. Of course, again, month-to-month basis here. Not going to tell the full story, of course. So one thing I'm making note of here is, of course, January well above average here, especially towards the beginning part of January here. Like I said, in that January outlook that we dropped the other day, you could see here that temperatures are going to be well above average, especially towards the very beginning of the year. We could be seeing record numbers, especially over towards the far northern states, northeast as well. As we go towards February, however, we start to see a little bit of a change. We kind of level off a little bit towards the northern states, even some areas starting to dip until it's below average temperatures. Those warmer temperatures are starting to dominate a little bit more off to the south now. Starting to see the southeast here, Gulf Coast states, and even Texas starting to get into the mix here with those well above average temperatures, possibly even 20 plus degrees above average pretty easily. And then we start to see a little bit of a shift of those warmer temperatures out west. March kind of is one of those months that has me scratching my head a little bit personally, based off of what I'm seeing off the oscillations here. Do think there's going to be, like I said before, do think that there's going to be a lot of movement with this. So we could see the southeast at times looking below average. I still expect a predominantly above average month for the region here. But one thing that, of course, always interests me is whenever we see this signal here, it does mean that cold air is eventually going to be moving out towards the east here. Just how far south and east is still the question, and that could change everything. So, like I said, it's going to be hard to get a good grasp just based off the monthly outlook here, but I do think that March could be quite a wild card month. February could too, but well, really all three of these months I would say have the potential to do so, but more so February and March I'm really interested in as of right now. Of course, like I said, all of this is hearsay, and by the time we get towards maybe mid-January, this could look entirely different. So that being said here, let's go ahead and take a look at the precipitation anomaly. What you'll find interesting with this is just how quickly things change from the January to February outlook here. Of course, out towards the northwest right now, this is January. We're looking pretty busy over here towards the northwest. And limited, but a slight increase in activity over here towards the northeast, and of course towards the western part of the Great Lakes. Deep south looks like it's going to be pretty dry for most of January. By the time we get towards February, though, we get quite the flip here. And I mentioned this in the January outlook towards the very end of the month. I've noticed that there's increasing potential for a more active storm pattern across the U.S. as a whole here. So do you think that jet stream might be beginning to push a little bit further to the south by this time frame here? Like I said, still hearsay at this point, but I'm seeing some indicators that may be pointing towards that, at least in the long range outlook here. But we'll have to see how things pan out. Time we get towards March, pretty active look of course on here. Not too surprising to me, if I'm being honest, because this is usually that time of year when we start to see an increase in severe weather and just weather activity as a whole here. Jet stream, of course, begins to dip a little bit further towards the south. As we get towards March and April, of course, that's when we get a little bit closer towards peak severe season for the deep south here. So wouldn't be surprised to see this dip a little bit more by the time we get towards the next outlooks. But like I said, we'll just have to see how things pan out from that point. So interesting looks here. We're going to have to be very watchful as we progress further from winter and closer towards spring as to what could happen here. I do think that there's potential for a lot of active times ahead, especially as we get towards the very end of winter. So just make sure you stay tuned. Make sure you're hitting that like button, hit that subscribe button, hit that share button, and I will see you guys in the next one. Happy holidays. I'll see you next time.